Day 890 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 580,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,100 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 3 tanks, 8 APVs, and 42 artillery. Now, as for the 3 tanks and 8 APVs, they are clearly some pretty low numbers, and although impossible to discern if this was just a slow day or part of a new trend, however, events like these will likely become the longer-term trend, given that Russian forces continue to take quite the attritional warfare approach, not just to their manpower, but to these platform types as well, which, let's not forget, only exists in finite volumes. Then headed to the map and starting out in Russia today, as another substation was reportedly hit by Ukrainian drones in the Krasnodar Krai region at Tikhoretsk, which is in fact a logistical junction point containing main highways and railway lines, not to mention a military airfield as well. And although there's not a great deal of information on this latest event, Krasnodar Krai is taking a significant beating in this latest phase of the war. Then, also within Russia, a major fire has broken out at an oil refinery all the way over in Omsk, with this facility being one of the largest, if not the largest, oil refineries in all of Russia, based on annual refining capacity. The blaze, which engulfed one of the oil refining units, spread beyond an area of 300 square meters at the 22 million ton refining capacity facility, which is a critical part of Russia's oil infrastructure. Russian media reports indicate that the fire originated in an auxiliary room of the pumping station, though the actual cause remains unknown. However, Russian state news outlet TASS went out of its way very quickly to state that this incident didn't happen as a result of any Ukrainian drone attacks at all. And at about 2,500 kilometers or about 1,500 miles from Ukraine, then it is currently more than likely not to be a Ukrainian-related strike, with known Ukrainian strikes so far reaching up to approximately 2,000 kilometers. And yet, be this latest incident an accident or internal sabotage, either way, it would have precisely been a key target that Ukraine would have gone for anyway. And with about 15 successful Ukrainian UAV strikes on 13 oil refineries so far, then adding on top of that the 10 or so accidents of internal sabotage or happy accidents, just like this one here, then compounding that with Western sanctions leading to Russia's inability to obtain Western tech replacement parts, which most of these modernized oil refineries need, then it's appearing that Russia's pre-war oil refinery annual production capacity, which was around 2.49 or 2.5 billion barrels a year, is now looking to be notably less, perhaps at about 2.2 or 2 billion barrels a year. So it's no wonder that Russia had to ban their refined oil exports to their partner nations, because it's truly turned into an energy crisis for them. Of course, needing to meet their internal demands and their Ukrainian foreign policy demands. Oh, and perhaps most terrifying in all of this is at an exact freeze frame from one of the videos on this event, it produces something of an optical illusion that makes it look like the Scream Halloween Mr. Ghostface guy was there. Not a great omen. Just frightening. Then headed into the Ukrainian map today as a squad of 5 Russian soldiers from the Senes Special Forces group was eliminated in Ukraine's Chernihiv region. These elite operatives, likely working as part of a covert mission, were fully equipped with high-quality gear. They wore camouflage uniforms and carried rifles fitted with optical sights and silencers, along with a substantial carry case of ammunition. So events like these could almost be characterized as common at this point, as the complete elimination of this well-armed subversive group has happened in this very border region at least 2 or 3 times before, which also suggests effective counterintelligence or combat operations by Ukrainian forces. Then headed to the eastern Donbass region, where Ukraine's commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Alexander Syrsky, reported that Russian forces are experiencing significant losses while making minor gains on the eastern front. The Pokrovsk sector in the Donetsk Oblast has become a focal point of Russian efforts, with their most aggressive assault units deployed there. President Zelensky also identified Zelana, Novorodivka, and Pokrovsk as key Russian objectives, with active fighting ongoing in the Kupiansk sector in the way north, and the strategically important elevated town of Chasiv Yar, and I'll just pump up to that one there, on the central front lines of the Donbass, where most recently Ukrainian defenders of the 225th Separate Mechanized Brigade repelled a Russian attack. Tactics included the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, mortar launchers, automatic grenade launchers, and infantry who took part in repelling those latest Russian attempts, and mostly from the northern point of entry. Meanwhile on the map, Ukrainian security forces are conducting counter-sabotage operations in the Toretsk sector to intercept Russian saboteur groups, with some Ukrainian Special Operations Forces videos showing some of the fighting in urban terrain around the Zelizny location. And with it reported that those Russian units of which said to be coming almost exclusively from the eastern Sumy direction, which of course is way up north on the map at the border location with Russia. So perhaps Russia gave up existing hopes of a new Sumy border incursion in the north. Then briefly headed down to the Crimean Peninsula, as multiple explosions have been reported across the region, with residents in Sevastopol, Simferopol, and Yevpatoria hearing the blasts. In Sevastopol, the initial explosions were followed by aircraft taking off from Belbek airfield, suggesting a possible military response or defensive measure. And so this latest series of explosions across different locations within the peninsula indicates a potentially coordinated action, although there's not a great deal of information on this one yet, although we do know that ATACMS were used, with early photos of the ATACMS missile debris from one of the target locations. Then taking a look around on the map, because somewhere in the east, a Ukrainian FPV takes down a Russian Molniya UAV attack drone, and doing so by creeping in closely to the unsuspecting Russian operator's fixed-wing drone, with the AFU FPV drone then setting off its own charge, cutting the feed, and the rest is history. Then also, we saw the Russian perspective of the aftermath of another Russian BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicle that was destroyed somewhere at the front. This one's turret came clean off its rails, resulting from the devastating impact of what was likely its own onboard ammunition getting set off. Then, for a bit of fun, we also saw, somewhere in the east, a bit of quadcopter retrieval in action, as one such Ukrainian operator put his claw-grabbing skill tester prowess to the test, although it is unclear who this particular salvage drone belonged to. Then to something else I meant to show you guys yesterday, as a Russian tank with mine roller attached was evidently in the completely open fields, including its very identifiable turtle tank shed design, which was then perfectly struck by an RPG-7 warhead, reducing it to atoms, with the warhead itself being delivered through an FPV drone. But just before the complete destruction, the freeze frames give us a sometimes rare glimpse into how the internal munition detonation is so immense that it generates a powerful shockwave that is visibly present and radiates outwardly in all directions. Then headed across to some news for today. So earlier today, Ukraine proudly launched its second state-of-the-art Ada-class corvette in Turkey. This impressive vessel will soon join its sister ship, the Mazepa, which holds the esteemed title of the Ukrainian Navy's new flagship and is currently undergoing rigorous sea trials. All which to me means that the joke about the Russian Navy getting destroyed by a country without a navy will soon be a joke of the past. But as for some added context here, both these corvette ships are constructed in Turkey under a joint venture agreement between the two countries, and both ships were ordered quite some time ago before Russia performed its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And so it's not likely that these new ships will be deployed anytime soon, as they may become immediate targets for Russia. As such, Ukraine will continue production of its extremely effective Sea Baby and Nagura V5 drones, which have intimidated most of the Russian Navy from Crimean ports all the way back to Russian ports in the far east of the Black Sea. Then headed across to a bit of a Russian hardware update. So recent reports indicate that a desperate repurposing of naval artillery for ground combat platforms is occurring as the Russian Navy finds itself largely ineffective or absent from key theaters of operation now. Thus, in this latest situation, naval munitions designed for sea warfare are being makeshift and hazardously adapted for use via this hybridization of the post-World War II M46 field gun, very old artillery howitzer piece right there, and the 130mm AK-130 shipboard artillery system. So, in an unconventional and desperate move, Russian forces have reportedly managed to fire unitary naval 130mm rounds from the M46 howitzer. So this repurposing of munitions designed for different platforms underscores the dire circumstances of the Russian military, forced to use whatever resources are available, regardless of their original design and intended use. And given some of the sloppy monstrosities we've seen in the past, it's clear that these measures are born out of necessity rather than choice. With an ad hoc solution like this, likely to get a drastically smaller number of rounds out of it, leading to some catastrophic failures. Then headed across to the quickest Russian military mobilization blunder you have ever seen, as after failed attempts by the Russian MOD to stop their own soldiers from posting all sorts of Russian military blunders around the place for Juzzie to make use of, some Russian officers have reportedly now resorted to taking away newly minted Russian soldiers' personal phones to stop the spread of all the Russian military embarrassments. But fear not, this is just one such instance by one officer who wants to broad-nose all the way up the chain of command, as there is simply no stopping of the getting out of the blunders that are occurring within the Russian military all over the place. I can promise you that. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So, from the Ukrainian 3rd Assault Brigade in the Kharkiv direction, as we saw the moment of the Ukrainian soldiers having a laugh as they captured a Russian radio and tricked 2 Russians over the comms into not shooting at them. Then, upon getting closer to the enemy tree line, they, through a combination of this unit's actions and calling in the AFU drone strike team, forced any remaining Russians in their positions to retreat. It's all fun and games after you tap into the adversary's comms line. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. Once again, thanks for all the support. It really helps keep the channel going. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.